We're about news, commentary, conversations, truth, liberty, and God. We stand for American values and our flag. We believe that the Constitution is a document that fortifies rights already given to us by our Creator. We will not apologize for our love of God and country, ever. We are Right America Media.
Back in '63, where the pool was wild and the kids ran free. I was lifeguard Joe with my whistle and my tan.
All right, I was good. I had a whole thing written up to say, and now I can't even say it. Welcome to Granite State Live. Julian, what was that?
I have been writing music, and I wrote a song called Corn Pop Chronicles to document, Joe Biden's epic stories. And I'm working on a few others. We're going to get all of, Joe Biden's crazy sagas throughout his life and all of his, amazing successful accomplishments, like being a truck driver and somehow defending Nelson Mandela and being there to, with his rifle Bessie to defend the world from an attack of aliens because they came here in their spaceships called Taco Bell and Del Taco in their spacesuits made out of Dickies and Carhartt shirts with their elbows up high to, elbows up, knee-high socks, side to side, leaning like a cholo,
awesome.
Side to side.
That is so cool. So just, behind the scenes here before we started, I typed this whole thing up. I'm like, okay, I'm going to just apologize to everyone for not being Keith Hansen today. And Julian asked, hey, I'm going to do the intro. I'm like, well, I kind of already wrote something up. And now I understand why, because that was awesome. That was really cool. Anyway, I kind of botched the whole intro anyway, but it was a great song. It's awesome.
Hey,
can you buy this? Can you go listen to the song like on iTunes or something?
I'm going to be downloading the album and letting people, be able to buy it. There's going to be some serious ones, and there's going to be some funny ones. I just sent Juan one, Stay MAGA My Friends. Another one, Raise My Boys to Men.
Nice.
And I believe the third one I sent him was Half Boy, Half Man, which is a patriotic song about military service and stuff.
That's cool. So just tell me. Okay, real quick. Welcome to Granite State Live, guys. That's the show, just in case I forgot to say it. Keith Hansen would tell you about the weather or something, but, I am Pastor Josh Barnes, the apologetic poor substitute to Keith Hansen, but I am unapologetic about my Christian values and my conservatism. Joining me, of course, or actually I'm really joining him because I'm just here to substitute for Keith Hansen. By the way, it's going to be a great show, despite the fact that the great Keith Hansen isn't here. That's how great Granite State Live is. It can take a huge hit, like replacing Keith Hansen for Josh Barnes, and it's still an awesome show. And I'm joining Julian. And Julian, you kind of already introduced yourself, but
blue collar intellectual. Here to give it to you real, and we're gonna have a lot of fun because we're gonna have some serious topics today, but as always, we're gonna get intellectual. We're gonna dig in deep, and we're gonna give you a little bit some entertainment because you want some sweetness and you want some meat and potatoes to go along with your veggies, right?
Yeah, that's right. Making me hungry already. And I already had dinner. Quick question. Do you use AI in like creating these songs at all, or is it all like...
So I write the lyrics myself, and then I use an AI app to come up with the style of music because I'm a huge blues fan, and there's not a lot of blues these days. So it started as a cathartic sort of thing, more therapeutic than anything. I took a lot of the poetry and things I've written over the years and I put them into an AI, and I started manipulating and tooling around with the AI to come up with music. And hidden talent, a lot of people might not know, I sing. I grew up singing in church like 5 days a week, and not in the kids choir. I sang in the adult choir. And at one point I sang in the Dayton Boys City Choir when I was a kid.
Huh.
So I got back into it once I moved back home from the Marines and started singing blues, started singing karaoke. In high school, I even substituted for my boys' band a couple times. And it's sort of like singing makes me feel alive.
Yeah.
And it's like I could be having the worst day ever, and I'll go and I'll sing, and all of a sudden I
Lift
feel
your
fantastic.
spirits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like whether it's gospel or whether I'm singing, like one of my favorite songs to sing is actually I Put a Spell on You by Annie Lennox. And which is funny because like coming from singing gospel, people are like, "Oh my God, that's witchcraft." I was like, "No, it's a song about love." But let's.
Yeah.
I was like, there. I was like, it's. I understand the imagery there, but
Did you hear about the AI that topped the charts? I don't know. Was it over the weekend? The Velvet Sundown?
yes, I heard that.
Everybody
I'm
thought
like,
it was like a real band, and then they found out it was
Yep.
actually just AI generated, like the song, everything.
But isn't it crazy you can make AI music that is better than anything being played on the radio these days?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a high bar because a lot of the shit that's on the radio is shit. It is, there's almost no creativity there. It is devolved to a point where it's straight vulgarity. There's no message there. And a lot of the music I came up with, other than the satirical stuff, has a message behind it. Like Raise My Boys to Men is about like, hey ladies, I understand you want to be a part of the fatherhood process, but you're not a dad. The only one who can teach a boy to become a man is a man.
Right.
You can tell a boy as a woman how he should be as a man, but you're always looking at men from a woman's perspective. Only a man can be the example and turn a boy around and face him towards the world and say, this is what you're going to face, and this is the reality that's out there.
Yeah, and that's what
my
songs
job
used
is
to be.
turn a boy into a warrior.
That's what music used to be, right? I mean, it used
Yeah.
to have a message. It used to be, and I think Velvet Sundown probably did well because it was mimicking older style music, which
Yeah.
used to be
Which is
halfway decent.
a lot of what I try to do is like mimic the older style because I love blues, I love jazz, I love classic rock, southern rock, country, and I want stuff that like people can dance to, they can jam to, they can sit in the car. I got my kids dancing around the house listening to the music I created, and a lot of it's like supposed to be inspiring. So I made a bunch of patriotic songs, like one of them is Independence Day, and it's all of it is to bring us together as people.
That's
and
awesome.
Realize that we're, we have a lot in common with each other.
Yeah, that is so cool. I don't really know how to pivot from that. I'm not sure what the good segue is, but I wanted to mention before we got hot and heavy, like deep into the stuff tonight, that I wanted to pause for a second and give honor to John MacArthur, the great pastor who died last evening. Passed away. Let's see. I don't have a time. It was sometime yesterday that he passed away, and we have a couple clips of John MacArthur. In case you're not familiar with him, he was a pastor of Grace Community Church, I believe is the name, out in California. Was known for expositing the Bible and for simply just saying, "Let the Bible explain itself. Let's study this by itself instead of trying to sensationalize it and go with all these new trends." And was very effective. I wanted to play just a couple clips. Juan's got a couple queued up here. This was, I think, 2004, if I'm not mistaken, and this was MacArthur challenging a young Gavin Newsom in California on CNN.
God, he looks like such a frickin' sleazeball.
And with respect to the pastor, I just, I'm a practicing Catholic. I got married in the church 2+ years. I don't see what we're doing in terms of advancing the bond of love and monogamy and extending that to families of same sex in any way, shape, or form takes away anything from the church or the sanctity of the union that my wife and I have.
I would just like to ask the mayor, as a practicing Catholic, do you believe the Bible is the Word of God?
Yeah, look, Pastor, I'm not going to get in a theological debate with you.
No, that's not a theological debate. That's just a straight question. Do you believe the Bible is the authoritative Word of God?
Yeah, with respect, I guess I do. Now the response.
Well, then the Bible says when God created man, He said one man, one woman, cleaved together for life. That's a family. Jesus in the New Testament reaffirms that. All the writers of the Old and the New Testament affirm it. Adultery, bestiality, homosexuality was punishable by death according to the Old Testament law because it was so serious in those early years, because it literally shattered the hope of civilization. Well, the New Testament offers us, of course, grace. Those sins are sins. They are forgivable. Jesus died to redeem us from those sins. We're all sinners. You don't want to categorize sin.
What does the state have to do
with it? But the point at this juncture is, well, he's representing the state. He's coming back and saying, I'm a Catholic, and I'm a Catholic, and somehow this fits into my Catholicism. And I'm saying, well, what's your authority then?
Well, you know what? I guess the bottom line is we're living and advancing together across all kinds of differences, Pastor. It is an extraordinary, miraculous thing to come out here in San Francisco. And I think the world looks to us to see that it's possible to live together and advance together across our differences. And I'm proud to represent a city that has diverse points of view, open points of view, that doesn't believe in discrimination and has evolved from the old constructs that I think have frankly held back society, and many that are inconsistent, yes, with your faith, and I respect the difference of opinion.
Hey, all right, so Juan, our producer, Juan, everybody give a round of applause for Juan, because he's absolutely fantastic. He has the phone lines up, 833-603-TALK. That's 833-603-8255. Talk. You can call in, you can ask questions, you can argue with us, debate with us. As long as you're respectful, we're open to a dialogue. I do want to hit on what he just said, though.
Yeah, definitely.
Obviously, there's a conflict between what he said and his faith. Catholicism does not apologize for, or at least should not, I mean, we've had multiple popes that have said otherwise, but should not apologize for same-sex marriage or say that it's somehow acceptable in the Bible, because the Bible says what it says.
Right.
And you have to read the text and what it meant in the time that it was written and what those words meant at that time. Now,
this is why I think MacArthur was such a great figure, because he was willing to say, listen, if the Bible says it, stop calling yourself a Bible follower.
Yes.
If you deny it.
Now, where I will say is there is a role for government. Marriage is governed by contract law. The government's job is to recognize a contract between consenting adults when it comes to marriage, and to arbitrate the end of that contract. That's the only place the government has in it. So, to your ability to engage in a contract with another, I don't believe the government should have any say in who engages in that contract. However, if you're going to invoke faith in it, Gavin Newsom, you have to deal with the inconsistency between what you express as your faith and your position on this. Now, if you're going to say, I'm informed by my faith, but there is a departure between what the government should be involved in and what the church should be involved in, and those two have their own realms and they should stay in those realms, I would agree with that position, and that the church has failed in making that the overall culture of society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot to say there, right?
Because we see like churches with pride flags outside and shit like that, and I'm going, the Bible doesn't allow for that.
Right, and that's the thing. A lot of these quote-unquote churches are actually, their main message is anti-Christianity.
Yeah.
You could make an argument that they're not really religion, they're just mocking religion.
Yes.
And a mockery of religion is not
like this asshole.
Religion. Yeah, right.
Like that is a mockery of faith.
Exactly.
Because like no, there is nothing in the Bible that allows for that. And that's Christ gave grace to sinners, but the caveat for that grace was that you were supposed to cease to live in sin.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I recognize that I'm a sinful person. I'm not perfect. I don't Bible thump or hit people over the head with it because I don't have the authority, not being a perfect person, not completely living by the word, to be able to do that or to judge. I believe we'll all be judged at the pearly gates and we'll all be found wanting.
Exactly.
However,
matter of fact,
at the same
that's
time,
a great.
I also don't stand up at the pulpit and preach the word of God. If you are somebody who stands at the pulpit and preach the word of God, you shouldn't be, double speaking out of both sides of your mouth.
Right. Listen, we're all sinners. Even preachers are sinners. But for us to call sin not sin, that's the thing we can't do. Yes, we say, yes, I'm a sinner and I need mercy just as much as anyone else. But for me to turn around and try to say, I'm the one who gives mercy, you have to come to me for mercy. No, you have to go to Christ for mercy. I'm just going to preach what the Bible says, or at least that's what a pastor has to do.
Yes.
And we have a country filled with pastors that generally want to make people feel good instead of tell them what's true. And here's another example, actually. I've got one more clip. Juan, you got that one queued up? This one is him on Larry King Live being sort of, he's talking right about what you were just saying.
To Mr. MacArthur, the price for eternal life and life after death is obedience to church doctrine. So you must live a certain life in preparation for that life after death. That I totally reject. I am not going to...
Well, what do you think?
There is a way to get...
Hold it, Alan. What is...
Well,
You said you have to believe in Christ.
The only way to heaven, and at this point I respectfully disagree with the rabbi, nobody can live a righteous life. The Bible says that no one can obey the law of God.
So no one's going to heaven.
So no one can go to heaven on their own merits or on their own works. I don't care how many good works they do. The New Testament is crystal clear on the fact
so
that
a bad guy who believes in Christ, he's going to heaven.
Yeah.
A good guy who doesn't is.
But when he truly believes,
that don't sound just.
But when he truly believes, Larry, we don't want justice. Justice.
Want justice?
No, it sends everybody to hell. We need grace. We need forgiveness.
We need grace.
We need mercy.
See, that's a great point. That's the point that needs to be
Notice
made.
what she said, church doctrine. This is where I depart with Catholics, and this is going to be a very unpopular opinion for a lot of people. This country was not founded on Judeo-Christian principles. It was founded on Christian principles. And to my reading of the Bible, for exactly what it says, your salvation is your responsibility. You are not a good person because I put the government's gun to your head and force you to be a good person. I neither get into heaven for doing it, and you neither get into heaven for following and acquiescence under my monopolization of the use of force. And likewise, I also go, you know what? The church, Christianity is not a form of governance. Unlike Islam, unlike Judaism, unlike Hinduism, unlike Buddhism, or actually I'll exclude Buddhism. It's a way of life. It's not a mode of governance. But unlike those religions, those are forms of governance and faith.
Yeah.
The Bible, Christianity, is not a form of governance. It is a way of life. It is a way of faith. It is a way to Christ and to salvation. And you're supposed to follow it voluntarily of your own accord because God gives us the ability to choose.
I agree.
And I think that's
church history is filled with mistakes in this area.
And I think that's where the Catholic Church went wrong.
Catholic Church,
because
many of the
they
reformers,
created the doctrine that you have to go to the church to seek salvation, and the church stands in between you and your salvation. And I go, that is a complete rewrite of the Bible. You don't get to stand in between somebody and say, yeah, do 100 Hail Marys and you get into heaven. That's not how it works. Or donate to the church and you get into heaven. Or follow the church's doctrine and you get into heaven. No, you accept Christ into your heart. And then you live by the text of the Bible, and that is your ticket to salvation.
But it's
not
also
on
true.
acts alone and not on faith alone. You have to have the two.
Yeah, and it's not so much the actions, though those should follow, but it is the faith. But the faith produces, if it's real faith, it produces a a remorse over your sin.
Yes.
So if you have real faith that Jesus is the King of all eternity, he's returning one day, and he's offering you a place in the eternal kingdom of God because he died and suffered the wrath of God for your sins. If you really believe that, then you say, wow, I'm no good and I need to change.
Yes.
Now, if you don't ever change anything about your life and you never try to live for Christ, you can't say that you believe that he's the King of eternity who died for your sins.
Agreed.
I mean, you just can't say that.
Which is, so that brings me to another thing that has become popular currently. There's been this trend of people saying Christ is king. And the reason why it became a trend is because
Anti-Semitic.
Anti-Semitism. So Jews can't say Christ is king because they don't believe Christ is king. So, and that's the departure between whether we're founded on Judeo-Christian principles or Christian principles. However,
I believe the Jewish people will, at one point in the future, change their mind as a nation and become believers in Christ when he returns.
Now,
I love the Jewish people and the nation.
Agreed. And that's where I take issue with the people who bastardize the phrase Christ is king.
Yeah.
Because it's supposed to be a righteous thing of you professing your faith in God, but has become this way of castigating people and excusing bigotry.
Right.
And I find the people who use it say Christ is king, therefore I'm allowed to hate Muslims and I'm allowed to be a bigot towards everyone who is not a Christian. I'm going, no, you're being hateful.
Julian,
that is not the same as recognizing that these people are not followers of God and you need to bring them closer to God.
Yeah. So I just, with the time we have left, I gotta pick your brain.
Okay.
Lately, I've been pretty disappointed with Tucker Carlson.
Yes.
What are your thoughts about? I mean, he's been, and he justifies. He says, "Listen, I'm not against all Jewish people. I'm against but he tends to see a lot of conspiracy theories in the Jewish government, and he makes that such a big deal. What are your thoughts on that?
So I ride this very, very thin line of. There are valid criticisms of the Israeli government. There are valid criticisms of certain people who happen to be Jewish. And like we said with the previous guests on my podcast, Neil Gravilius, you can check back. I'll say the same thing. To a communist, communism is first and foremost in their mind. They are Jews second, they are Muslims second, they are Christians second. Communism first, everything else second as a tool to get communism. Now, when you look at Israel and you look at a lot of these, what I call Jew-spiracies, they go, oh, well, the Marxists who run the banking industry are Jews. Well, the Marxists who run the Hollywood and run the music industry are Jews. And the heads of all these major corporations are Jews. And the lawyers are Jews. And I'm sitting there going, yeah, but are they practicing Jews?
Yeah.
Because to my recollection, most of them aren't. Most of them are practicing Marxists. They're communists. They're not Jews. They're not faith Orthodox Jews. There are 15 million Jews on the planet. You're saying all 15 million Jews are in on this conspiracy? That sounds fucking bonkers to me.
I do feel like there's a lot of stereotypes.
All the Jews just got in. Yeah, like
just lump them all together. They're all the same. I don't like that.
So Tucker Carlson has gone down this rabbit hole, like Candace Owens and like many others, of Jew conspiracies. And they go, "Have you read the Talmud?" I'm like, you mean all the books of the Talmud? You read all of them?
Yeah, there's a lot.
Like
it's a big read.
Did you read one or did you read all of them? That's a big read.
Yeah.
That's not reading all the books of the Bible from front to back. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's like reading the entire Britannica. Like, you read the whole encyclopedia word for word. That's like when somebody says, "I read the dictionary." It's like, yeah, I don't believe you. You sound retarded.
Yeah.
So it's Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens. They went down this Jew-spiracy rabbit hole, and you watch them destroy everything that they once stood for this whole, oh, well, maybe the Jews are really running everything, and we need to cast out the Jews, and and then they start to get into this whole, the Jews are really running the world, and they really did this, and they really did that, and they really did this. And I go, no, some people who happen to be Jewish did X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
They didn't do it because they were Jewish. Most of them did it because they had other ideological other ideological goals, like Marxist.
I think that's really important. I think that when we look at conspiracy theories, we should say, okay, maybe there's a world in which this is true. But until I see really solid evidence for it, I say, who knows?
And I see a lot of circumstantial evidence. It's a lot of, oh, well, I'm going to connect the dots and I'm going to say that this person's motivation was this and this person's motivation was that. That's not how things work.
Yeah.
Most conspiracies are a few people acting, conspiratorially, and the vast majority of people following in their own self-interest.
But thank God for the faithfulness of John MacArthur.
Thank God.
We need many, many more pastors and Christian men like him.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. Well, 833-603-8255 is the number to call and get in on the show. And we're going to take a quick break. Wait, do we have a few seconds? Okay. Go read 2 Timothy 4. It's Paul right before he dies, talking about how he ran the race with faithfulness and was unashamed to meet Christ. I think that's the state of Pastor John MacArthur. And we do wish his family well and comfort. And we'll see you on the other side of the break.
Don't remember my name.
United We Stand, A Marine's Fight. Written by Julian Aciard. I wrote this book to decipher through the tumultuous political dialogue and political gangbanging we see on both sides of the aisle between politicians, activists, influencers, and pundits, and get down to brass tacks solutions in order to save our republic. Again, United We Stand, A Marine's Fight, written by Julian Aciard. You can purchase the book on Amazon, Kindle, and Barnes & Noble.
Would you rather spend time with family and friends in the pool or at the barbecue rather than landscaping your yard? Well, Augusta Lawn Care is here to help you with all of your landscaping needs. Proudly serving southern New Hampshire, we handle everything. Weekly mowing, spring and fall cleanups, bush trimming, mulch installs, lawn treatments, aeration, dethatching, and even snow plowing and salting when the dreaded winter hits. Call Augusta Lawn Care today and let your yard be the best looking yard on the block. Call 603-331-4768. Augusta Lawn Care, locally owned, professionally done. Call 603-331-4678 or visit us online at AugustaLawnCareServices.com/Londonderry. That's AugustaLawnCareServices.com/Londonderry.
New Hampshire Republican Governor Kelly Ayotte has been making a lot of noise about how she's funding education. The Republican budget she just signed provides more money for education than ever before. She even bragged the other day that New Hampshire is top 10 in the country when it comes to funding our children's education, as if giving money to school systems has anything to do with learning. If you look at the math, and if you got schooled in New Hampshire, the odds are good it's not your best subject. It's the exact opposite. The more money we throw at schools, the less kids learn. We're committed to wasting money on an experiment that failed, unless wasting money to drive parents to homeschool their kids was the goal. We prefer to pick on Democrats, lower hanging fruit and all that, but our rhetorical woodshed doesn't discriminate. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for GraniteGrok, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
This could be the moment we've been waiting for, the chance to feel alive.
Sometimes we forget we live in one of the most beautiful states in the country. This summer, vacation right here and discover your new.
This is where it all begins. This is where it all begins.
Just out of school, half a boy, half a man by the rules. Can't buy a beer, but he'll stand and fight for the freedom you sleep in every night. 10-year-old car girl back home, letters with misspellings from a combat zone. Knows a rifle like the back of his hand. Field strips sit blind where the foxholes stand.
Half boy, half man. Another song that I wrote, very patriotic. So, welcome back to Granite State Live. We're in our second segment of the day. Up next, we have our Publius special guest, John Wilson, author of Varsity Blues, The Scandal Within the Scandal, here to talk about the CIA Director John Brennan, former CIA Director John Brennan, and former FBI Director James Comey under criminal investigation for potential wrongdoing related
it's
to
about time.
Right? For the Trump-Russia probe. It's about time that we start seeing some heads roll in D.C. The Biden administration went after a bunch of people, and, they opened the floodgates to going after the elites and holding people accountable for their actions. I think this is something that's long overdue. Thank you for coming on, sir.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here.
So what should we be paying attention to in this case as CIA Director John Ratcliffe refers evidence of wrongdoing for these two individuals?
Well, I'm not an expert on the case, but I have been exposed to the corruption in our government and how federal prosecutors, the FBI, and the DOJ overall can weaponize our system of justice against innocent people, and how they can abuse the system for political reasons or even personal career gains or personal vendettas. And I've experienced that firsthand with my family in the Varsity Blues case.
That's right, because you wrote the book, Varsity Blues, what is it, Scandal Within a Scandal, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And tell us about that. You were accused of something in the public school, right? With your son?
Yes, we were falsely accused. If you step back, this was a case that happened almost 7 years ago. And so we just wrote our book, just released it a couple of months back. This case at its core was about 30 parents who abused their privilege, who were cheating on tests, who were bribing coaches, and who were printing false profiles of their children, who were unqualified for the schools they applied to, all to bump more qualified, more deserving children in the queue. And what they did was despicable, and I don't support that for one moment. However, that was what they did. It wasn't what we did. My family was brought into this case. We were falsely accused by the Boston prosecutors for their own personal career gains. If you step back in this case, there were 3,000 parents involved. Only 30 were accused. Of the 3,000 parents who were clients of the ringleader of this case, Reisinger, only one lived in Massachusetts. That was me. And the Boston prosecutors, when they found this case and they saw that there were celebrities like Felicity Huffman and Lori Loughlin involved in this case, they knew there would be media attention. They knew this could be a career, making opportunity for them. And so what they wanted to do was create a false conspiracy, which the appeals court overturned and threw out. And then they needed one co-conspirator, alleged co-conspirator, to live in Massachusetts. And that was me, 1 out of 3,000. So they used my case, even though they knew we were innocent, to bring 30 parents and all the media spotlights to Boston to boost their own careers. It was despicable, and they still are fighting us to this day. I'll give you some examples of how outrageous their behavior can be. They call my son an alleged athlete to this day. They know he had a world record. They had the evidence. They know he was playing water polo at the national level. He won first place, was a starter in the National Junior Olympics. He played for Stanford Club for 7 years. He was invited to join the U.S. Olympic team development program twice, and he played for USC. And yet they said he was a fake athlete, an alleged athlete, right? And they can do that because they handpicked a judge. This is a map that shows actually how they used me as the venue hook for this case. All of the parents, all of the colleges, Singer and his organization were all on the West Coast. They only had one person out of 3,000 in Massachusetts, and that was me. And they used me to bring all of the trials to Massachusetts. So what they did was despicable because they just destroyed my children. So my son, who spent 10 years competing for 7,000 hours, right? Think about that, 7,000 hours competing at the national and international level in water polo, joined the USC team, trained for 40 hours a week at USC, and they called him alleged athlete. And they got a judge that they handpicked, they were able to judge shop, who blocked our evidence 98.3% of the time. Not just once, not just twice. This judge blocked our evidence 660 times. He was the oldest judge, federal judge in America that's full-time, 87 years old, and they basically got him to disallow all of our evidence. So, for example, not just my son's great credentials, my daughters, we had twin daughters. One of my daughters had a perfect ACT score. The other had a 99% composite score. To put that into perspective, fewer than 5,000 people in the world out of 1.8 million people who take the ACT test get a perfect score. That was not allowed into my trial. A trial about college admissions. My daughter's certified test score is not in. My son's certified swim times. The evidence that got blocked was outrageous. And it was the basis for the appeals court unanimously overturning all my convictions. But that cost me my entire career. It cost $11 million to fight these guys. They gave us 5 million documents to have to go through in this case. Think about that. It destroyed all of my life savings. I grew up poor. I grew up in poverty. I grew up in welfare with a single mom in the projects of Hartford, Connecticut. I picked tobacco for 4 years, 60 hours a week from the ages of 12 to 16 out in the fields. I know what the value of a dollar is. I earned every dollar I donated, and they knew that. And yet they destroyed me and my family. And rather than confessing to a crime I didn't commit, we fought to defend our children's honor and my family's honor. And so we've seen the dirty tricks that the government can do again and again and again. And it's just despicable. And it needs to stop. Because if they can do it to people like me who never did anything wrong, I never was accused of a crime in my life, they can do it to other people too.
Wow.
And people like Brennan and Comey and other people like that can just take the law into their own hands in many cases. And if they can judge shop for a judge who will approve everything, there's no check and balance on justice. Once they get a judge who's a rubber stamp, then they can do whatever they want. And that's what they did. They railroaded us through a trial that was just outrageous. It was so outrageous that 11 former U.S. attorneys wrote an amicus brief in my appeal, which almost never happens. They basically said that, and they criticized their former colleagues, said that John Wilson did not get a fair trial. That's the exact quote. It was so outrageous. We didn't pay those U.S. attorneys. We didn't even know those U.S. attorneys. What they saw in my trial transcripts was so outrageous that they wrote that kind of amicus brief. And our federal system of justice can be abused. I'm not saying everybody abuses the system. I'm still a believer in the justice system, believe it or not. I believe it gets it right much of the time. And I believe most people working in the government are hardworking, honest people. But a few bad apples who can rise to the top can abuse our system with almost no checks and balances, and it's really outrageous, and it's got to stop.
Yeah, I've got the quote here. This is from Harvey Silvergate. I've practiced criminal law for more than half a century, but I'm still capable of shock at how easy it is for an innocent person to be falsely charged and convicted. Mr. Wilson was innocent, yet his prosecutors charged him and smeared his children. Do you feel like you can kind of maybe identify a little bit with President Trump after all that he went through and all the false allegations and drummed up charges that he dealt with? You feel like there's some good comparison there?
Absolutely. I think that the justice system can be bastardized, again, to suit either political purposes or, in my case, personal career gains, or in some cases I'm familiar with as I've gotten involved in this now, personal agendas and vindictive agendas. And it really is shocking. The criminal justice system, if you think about it, is out of control. It's out of balance. You know, the win rate that federal prosecutors have over the last 10 years is 99.6%.
Wow.
How can any system that's subject to human foibles and human frailties win one side against the other 99.6% of the time?
It's even
It's
worse
outrageous how slanted the system is.
It's even worse than that. I've often said that as limited government conservatives, we have gotten the criminal justice system argument wrong, right? Typically, so a good example of this is a friend of mine, Dexter Taylor, who is in New York, who had a case similar to yours where they went judge shopping, replaced the judge that they had on the case to a black woman to lock this man up for a hobby of augmenting and creating, playing around with firearms. He's an armor by hobby, and he had a FFL license. He did everything correctly, went by the book. They wouldn't allow him to, or his lawyers, to mention the Second Amendment, the Bruin case, the Heller case, or anything of the like in court. And now he is sitting in prison for a decade and is constantly fighting and filing appeals to try and get released from prison over something that the state knew. They already had police that went to his house multiple times and were like, there's nothing here. And eventually they sent somebody in, locked him up, and they basically wouldn't allow any evidence that allowed him to explain what he was doing, why he was doing it. And they accused him of creating and selling ghost guns on the open market in New York, which he never sold a firearm. Like, to this date, they have zero evidence that he sold a firearm.
Yeah.
And I've often said this when it comes to cases around the country that, we pay attention to it when it happens to people within our own tribe, and we dismiss it when it happens to people outside of our tribe. But the government as a whole, once you enter the system, it is the government system, and the government wins.
Yeah, and we're fortunate in many ways, as painful as this 7-year nightmare has been for my entire family. It's been a financial, emotional, and physical nightmare for my children and my wife for 7 years. We're fortunate because we had the resources. I was lucky. I had a successful career in business. We had the resources to fight. Most people don't have that. They threw me into a federal prison for 2 days with 650 inmates just to intimidate me in this process for 2 days. I was the only person of non-color in the prison, an older gentleman. They said, the prison guards, they hosed me down, and they warned me, said, watch your back in here. They're going to assume you're a pedophile because you're an old white man. Someone's going to probably try to stab you with a shiv. That's what they did for 2 days. This is for making a donation. The only crime I committed was making a donation to a college. I got a receipt for my donation, and the school's been allowed to keep my money to this day. And my son's swim time was changed by 6.4%. That was it. I didn't do that. Reisinger did that. But they charged me with 14 felonies over the period of time here. Think about
for
that.
A single donation.
Well, it was 3 donations for different children, and then they said it was wire fraud, mail fraud, honest services fraud, all of these things. They kept piling on charges for the same crime. It ended up being 180 years of prison time.
Wow.
They did that to intimidate me. They charged me 5 separate times, and they said each time, if you don't plead guilty now, we're going to add on more charges. And that's what they can do in this process. It was actually 9 felonies in the end that they charged me with. They did drop some. So think about that. 9 felonies for making a donation where I got a receipt. And they know that. They had the receipts. They had the evidence from USC. And they know my children didn't cheat. And we know that because they blocked their test scores from the judge, from the jury, with the judge's help. And they know my son joined the team and he played on the team. So they had all this evidence. They blocked it all because they needed to cover up their bad acts of charging me with false crimes in the first place. And they hoped that I would confess and plead guilty because they kept charging me again and again over the course of a year. And I said to the end, I said to my lawyers, I don't care if they charge me assassinating JFK and being on the grassy knoll. I'm not confessing. I just said that. I'm not going to confess to something I didn't do. And so I fought them, and I think that was probably the surprise of their lives. And I'm continuing to fight them for my children's honor. Because they deserve it.
Are you going to launch a lawsuit?
I can't sue the government. The statute of limitations is expired, and they have protections. But I am suing USC and also suing Netflix.
That's what I was going to ask you.
3 Goliaths at once.
When did Netflix get involved in this? What do they have to do with this?
So Netflix got outrageously involved in this as well. Before my trial even happened, Netflix was announced they were going to put out a movie about this, a documentary they called it. So we heard this was announced. My lawyers pulled together a 550-page letter with all of the public evidence showing that we were innocent. We sent it to them before the movie even came out. They ignored it and went with their movie, and they depicted me as being the worst parent of any in the movie. They showed me, or the actor playing me, 25 times in the first 23 minutes. They didn't show me saying anything illegal, but they had my face, my quote, and then somebody doing an illegal act. So they convicted me in the movie, just like the prosecutors, through guilt by association.
Yeah.
I never committed any act. You know, for example, I said to Singer on the setup calls when he was talking to other parents about bribing coaches. The FBI scripted Singer, and he says to me, "Are you okay if we give a check to the coach?" I said, "Yeah," on the recorded call. But it was a check made out to the school, and we got a receipt from it. But when you hear 30 parents saying we're going to bribe the coach, and you're the jury, or you're in this case the movie Netflix, they have other parents saying we're going to bribe, and then you have my quote on a recorded call saying I'm okay giving a check to the coach. Well, it sounds like a bribe, but it wasn't. It was a check made out to the school, and I got a receipt for it. Right? So you can take sound bites out of context, and they did that over and over again. They also had a picture of my son that was just outrageous. They showed this little kid standing in the shallow end of the pool. Literally a little wimpy kid, nothing against the kid, I don't know who he is, but literally a kid who probably weighed 80 pounds standing in the shallow end of the pool. My son is a 210-pound buff, national and world champion athlete. And they had pictures of my son, and they showed, instead of that picture they had, this little wimpy kid standing in the shallow end of the pool and a dad taking a fake picture of him, right? So they did that kind of thing over and over in their movie, and it poisoned the jury pool. We did a jury polling kind of exercise, and I was flabbergasted when I heard this, and still hurts to this day. One of the potential market research people said that I was worse than Hitler. They said I had murdered every child in America's dreams for college. That's what they said. Wow. I had murdered what? That's how crazy this case got, and how they poisoned the jury against me in this case. And so that kind of thing was almost impossible to overcome. And since they were warned in advance of our truth, we now filed suit against them after I was exonerated by the appeals court. And so we won, actually very good. We won the very first hurdle against them. They had a motion to dismiss, which is where these big media companies win almost all the time. They said they were using the fair report privilege. And the judge in Massachusetts Superior Court said, no, there's merit to this case. It's going forward. So now we're in discovery, and that'll probably take 2 years, the way Netflix drags things out. And we're getting great evidence in discovery, so we're very excited about that. And we're also suing USC because USC was a very bad actor in this case. We did not just donate to the school blindly. We went to the school. We were honest, decent parents. We were part of the 99% of Singer's parents who were honest. We didn't cheat on tests. My son really played. His high school coach recommended him to the USC team. So we went to the school to visit the team. We visited the coach. We visited the development office. We got assurances from all of them that this was fine. Donating through a Singer's organization had happened many times in the past. And in fact, the records show that. And that if you gave a donation to the school, you'd get a tiebreaker boost for a highly qualified kid. And our son was highly qualified. He joined the team. He was one of the fastest players on the team. And so during my trial, we were shocked when the USC admissions officer on the stand said, we never take donations into consideration for athletic positions, whether they're walk-on redshirt players or not. And we had 100 examples that showed just the contrary to that. Those were all blocked by the prosecutor and all blocked by the judge. But when USC said that, that meant that what they told us back when we first applied years before, that was fraud. So we're suing them for defrauding us when we made our original donation. And they've still been allowed to keep our money to this day. So it's really just shocking how each of these Goliaths is protecting themselves. They're trying to cover up the truth. But I'm a fighter. I've been a fighter since I was a young child, growing up in the projects. And I'll fight to my last breath and my last dollar defending my children.
I think the most important thing is for the average person to understand that for the vast majority of cases like yours, they'll never see the light of day. We'll never hear about them because the vast majority of people don't have the resources that you do. They don't have the ability to fight. So when a prosecutor, for whether it's for ideological purposes or personal advancement, there's perverse incentives towards, obviously, being a prosecutor is often seen as a political, a very political position because you have the potential of being a DA, AG, so on and so forth, climbing the ladder, and later into politics, which is very, very common. You see a lot of these cases, or you don't see most of these cases because most people don't have the resources, but a lot of people end up pleading out to criminal charges that they didn't actually commit on the threat of greater criminal charges in just the monetary factor of, I don't have the money to fight 13, 14, 15, 16 charges over something I didn't do just to get out of the one thing that they're actually accusing me of. Like, and they have the ability to just throw shit at the wall to see if it sticks and just keep coming back to you to see what is your breaking point. And then they have the ability to threaten your family members. So if we can't get you and you're not going to play nice, now we're going to bring your wife into this. Now we're going to bring your kids into this. Now we're going to bring your family members into this as all conspirators in some grand scheme that never happened. Because they don't want to be embarrassed.
That was part of the threat they used in this case. Exactly. They threatened my wife and my children as well of committing fraud. So the whole case is just outrageous how they can stack charges, how they can basically destroy you reputationally, financially, and emotionally. And as you said, most people, I feel badly, most people don't have the resources or the grit or the support network to fight against these Goliaths. And thank God I do. So I'm actually one of the lucky ones. So as painful as this has been, I consider myself actually fortunate. And I'm fighting in large part to make sure this doesn't happen to other people, to bring a voice to this injustice. This is not what I want to be doing with the last 7 years of my life, fighting this, right? I'm fighting this for my children. I'm fighting this to correct a wrong. And I'm fighting this for the greater good of saying what these prosecutors are doing, what the people like Comey and other people have done and will continue to do unless people speak out, is despicable. And their power is almost unlimited. And it's hard as a little David to fight against these Goliaths. I was fortunate. I earned a lot of money in my career. I had to spend it all. I spent every single bit of my savings, every dollar I've ever earned and I saved, I had to spend fighting these charges. And at this point, even though we won at the appeals court, where do we go to get our reputations back, right?
Yeah.
It's destroyed my children's reputations and their futures. And they were hardworking kids with perfect scores. My son had a 93 percentile and a 3.8 GPA, and he played on the USC team. And the government to this day says he's an alleged athlete.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he should be able to file defamation charges and libel charges against people for calling him an alleged athlete. You either are an athlete or you're not. That is.
But the way they do that,
ridiculous.
Exactly. But the way they do that, which is also very coy. These guys are super smart. The government never said it publicly. If you go to the New York Times, look at quotes, they'll say Johnny Wilson was an alleged athlete or he didn't play at that level, according to government sources. So they never make it an official quote, so you can't actually sue anybody. So they're smart at how they do this. They can trash you by feeding sub rosa quotes to the media, right? And then the media hides behind, privilege. And so they never actually come out with a public statement that says this because they know they will be sued. What they do is they feed the media these sound bites, and then the media puts these as quotes because they're protected because they're quoting the government. According to government sources, his son is an alleged athlete. Or they make statements in the courtroom where it's protected language as well. So in my case, they said to the jury at the end, it doesn't matter if my son, because we had some facts that showed my son was a real player. They said, it doesn't matter if he's the Tom Brady of water polo. If his swim time was changed, in this case by 6.4%, that's a fraud, that's a crime. I didn't even do that. I didn't even know his swim time to that level of specificity. But, think about what they can do. They can destroy you, and they basically either play it coyly so that you can't charge them, or they do it in court overtly where they're protected. Anything they say in court is protected. You can't sue them for what they say in court, even if it's a bald-faced lie. And that's part of the system. They can make bald-faced claims and lies on the stand. And they can get people to lie on the stand as well, because the other thing we found, we had a lot of people lying on the stand that were fighting for the government. We had impeachment evidence proving they were lying. The judge and they blocked it. And the only people who can press perjury charges is the government. So if they're having a witness lie to help them, do you think they're going to press perjury charges against their own witness?
Right.
No. But that's the kind of perversion of our justice system that takes place today.
Yeah. And you are shining a light on this corruption, and not just by being on the show today, but also in your book. Tell us where we can find Varsity Blues, The Scandal Within the Scandal, the book that you wrote on this matter.
Yeah, let me tell you one thing before that is all the proceeds from this book are going to charity. Not a single penny is going to my family. So we're doing this, and we've got 3 charities. One of them is a legal foundation for people who don't have the resources to fight against the government. So I wanted that to be clear to people. But the book can be bought anywhere online, Amazon, other online retailers, even in bookstores. You can order it in a bookstore if it's not there on the shelves. And I would encourage people to go to my website as well. It's called thescandalwithinthescandal.com to get updates. We were on Good Morning America. We've gotten a lot of publicity for this book. It was an Amazon bestseller for the first month or so when it came out. So we're very excited to get our story out there, not just to help defend our family, but to stop this from happening to other people.
I want to thank you for coming on. Please tell the audience where they can find you, support you, and follow your case further.
They can follow us on the website scandalwithinthescandal.com. And there you'll see all kinds of information and updates on my case. I'll be updating real time when we make progress on the USC lawsuit, on the Netflix lawsuit, and any other things that come up in this case. And I think if people have a concern about our justice system, there are more than 50 examples of outrageous misconduct on the part of prosecutors in this case. And I think people will be truly shocked. And I would encourage them to give the foundation that we have for legal help is called NACDL, the North American Criminal Defense Lawyer Association. It's a foundation that helps provide legal services to people who don't have the resources to defend themselves. It's a very high quality organization. And again, if this can happen to someone like me, it can happen to others. And thank God we have the resources to fight and to speak out. And we speak out not without risk. These guys are vindictive, and they still keep coming after us for all kinds of things. And so it's not something that's easy to do, but we feel compelled to do this to try to really stop this from happening in the future.
All right. Thank you for coming on. I love your story. Please send us a copy of your book so we can continue to promote it further. And we'd like to have you on in the near future to discuss any updates you have in the case and further, especially with the lawsuit against Netflix. I'd like to see them taken to task for what they've done to you. Thank you for coming back.
Great. I will do that.
All right.
Thank
that's
you
the
too.
end. All right, people, that is the end of this segment. We're going to be riding into the top of the next hour, and we have some more great guests coming up.
Brian Reisinger.
We're going to have some great guests coming up for you next. Tune in. Just a minute.
19 years just out of school, half a boy, half a man by the rules. Can't buy a beer, but he'll stand and fight for the freedom you sleep in every night. 10-year-old cargo bag.
United We Stand, A Marine's Fight. Written by Julian Aciard. I wrote this book to decipher through the tumultuous political dialogue and political gangbanging we see on both sides of the aisle between politicians, activists, influencers, and pundits, and get down to brass tacks solutions in order to save our republic. Again, United We Stand, A Marine's Fight, written by Julian Aciard. You can purchase the book on Amazon, Kindle, and Barnes & Noble.
Would you rather spend time with family and friends in the pool or at the barbecue rather than landscaping your yard? Well, Augusta Lawn Care is here to help you with all of your landscaping needs. Proudly serving southern New Hampshire, we handle everything. Weekly mowing, spring and fall cleanups, bush trimming, mulch installs, lawn treatments, aeration, dethatching, and even snow plowing and salting when the dreaded winter hits. Call Augusta Lawn Care today and let your yard be the best looking yard on the block. Call 603-331-4768. Augusta Lawn Care, locally owned, professionally done. Call 603-331-4678 or visit us online at AugustaLawnCareServices.com/Londonderry. That's AugustaLawnCareServices.com/Londonderry.
New Hampshire Republican Governor Kelly Ayotte has been making a lot of noise about how she's funding education. The Republican budget she just signed provides more money for education than ever before. She even bragged the other day that New Hampshire is top 10 in the country when it comes to funding our children's education, as if giving money to school systems has anything to do with learning. If you look at the math, and if you got schooled in New Hampshire, the odds are good it's not your best subject. It's the exact opposite. The more money we throw at schools, the less kids learn. We're committed to wasting money on an experiment that failed, unless wasting money to drive parents to homeschool their kids was the goal. We prefer to pick on Democrats, lower hanging fruit and all that, but our rhetorical woodshed doesn't discriminate. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for GraniteGrok, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
This could be the moment we've been waiting for, the chance to feel alive.
Sometimes we forget we live in one of the most beautiful states in the country. This summer, vacation right here and discover your new.
This is where it all begins. This is where it all begins.
Donald Trump so bold, through Spygate storms his stories told. They say they spied, but proof went cold. Yet fans still cheer his name so loud. Like tequila shots in dry town bars, the truth slips through like...
That is the Corn Pop Chronicles.
The corn.
All right, we're back from the break. Up next, we're going to be discussing with Brian Reisinger, the author of Land Rich, Cash Poor, My Family's Hope, and the untold story of the disappearing American farmer.
Hopefully. He's not on the line yet, so we might have a little technical difficulty.
But
I've been instructed that we're supposed to talk about immigration till it gets here.
Yes. And that's exactly where I'm going, because we just had out in California, you have, I ranted about it earlier, Gavin Newsom discussing
the marijuana farm?
The marijuana farm, hundreds of people getting locked up. I was like, so that wasn't an issue that like there were known sex offenders on this farm and criminals on this farm, cartel members on this farm, farming side by side with illegal immigrant children, like
unaccompanied minors.
Yes, unaccompanied minors. And I'm like, are we skipping over the fact that children are being used as a shopping mechanism to partner with illegal immigrants coming across the border? So even if you did come across with your parents, now your kids are being taken away from you and handed to the next group so that they can continue to get let into the country under the Biden administration so that they can get their feet on the ground. And so it is this horrible manufactured crisis that we shouldn't even have to deal with. It should be pretty reasonable to just say, come here legally.
There's so much wrong here, right? I mean, first of all, marijuana, technically illegal federally, even though it's not legal by the state in California.
Yeah.
So federally, this is illegal for them to even have the farm. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, we know there's lots of marijuana farms all over the country now.
As long as it doesn't pass California state lines.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure how. I'm sure they're not picky about it. But the point is that here we have a business that's let's just call it. We'll just ignore the fact that it's marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
It's a farm, okay? And they are hiring cheap, underpaid labor, right? Mm-hmm. That's why you hire illegal immigrants, right? So all of a sudden, right off the bat, it's terrible what they're doing.
Your entire labor force is illegal, and you're like,
and they're underage kids that are unaccompanied.
Yes. So child labor laws and illegal immigration laws, and you're using them to traffic at the same time. You're involved in human trafficking at that point as well.
Yeah.
It's like, this is why we need E-Verify, right? This is why we need to start holding these companies and these businesses accountable for hiring illegal immigrants.
But can you imagine that 10 years ago, like, I don't know about you, but for me, immigration was, it's a thing, I guess. Until Trump came down that elevator, and then all of a sudden, escalator, not an elevator,
yep.
right? And all of a sudden, he starts making this big deal about immigration, and all of our eyes are open, like, oh my goodness. And now that he's actually doing, we see just how bad it really is.
I lived out in California. I was stationed out there, and you could see at the edge of every Home Depot and Lowe's parking lot, guys like. You saw illegal immigrants everywhere. Wow. And you have Gavin Newsom going on and saying that like 40% of our state population of farmers are illegal immigrants. I was like, that's not something to brag about.
Yeah.
And their excuse is always, oh, well, Americans don't want to farm and do construction and do landscaping and clean toilets and do housekeeping. I go, all of these jobs, every single one of them used to be populated by Americans.
Yeah.
Like, this is an argument. Every argument you can make for illegal immigration, you can make for legal immigration.
There's the word. Legal. We are not against immigrants. We're against illegal immigrants.
I always find it interesting how you watch the Democrats use the exact same arguments that they used for slavery for illegal immigration. I'm like, what you really want, just say it out loud. You want a permanent underclass that you can undervalue, underpay with zero legal protection to do the stuff you don't want to do. You elitist, you friggin' blue wazee, you want the people.
And they even say that now, don't they?
Yes.
I mean, they'll even come out and say, well, there's not enough people to run our farms. And all of that is a great segue to our next guest, which is Brian Reisinger, who's joining us here, the author of Land Rich, Cash Poor, My Family's Hope, An Untold History of the Disappearing American Farmer. Brian, thanks for joining us on the show today. I'm not sure. Are we getting it? I'm not sure. It's a little choppy. I think I'm seeing a shot of him. I'm hearing a little bit of his voice, maybe.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Oh, all right, now we got you.
There he is.
All right, good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we've been having a conversation about immigration and how Trump's recently there was this the raid on the marijuana farm, but this kind of just has led into a whole conversation about whether we have to have illegal immigrants stay in the country because they're running our farms for us, or whether Americans should be taking these jobs on these farms. What are your thoughts on that?
You guys are hitting on such a key issue. This is the foundational economic issue. What we have in this is but the reality is that there's all kinds of Americans who would love to do those jobs. Sure, some immigrant but all people in HFFA who love to farm, who love to take over a farm, who love to work and farm down the road. But they're not told by their guidance that you got to go farming, right? So we have to do something about the fact that we're marching toward bigger farms and cheaper labor. If we had family farms that were growing entrepreneurial ventures with rising wages, brighter economic futures, you'd have a whole heck of a lot of young American people wanting to get into those industries and work the land.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing all across the Midwest and all across the South, farms being shut down as more and more farms become corporate. More and more farms become agricultural towns are becoming ghost towns.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And people wonder why, there's so much economic frustration in rural America. Well, you just hit on it. We've been losing farms at the rate of 45,000 per year on average for a century, 45,000 a year. And those farms built our rural community. So when you lose your farms at 40,000, you're used to the population, communities are shrinking. And then by the time you're losing manufacturing jobs and other economic activity, you have people who have been losing economically, who've had an economic decline underway. So that's why they're so frustrated with the economic status quo. That's why they supported President Trump and want to see things shaken up.
I'm so glad that President Trump is in office. I have long said that Republicans are just as guilty as the Democrats on this situation, because we have allowed this mass corporatization of our farmland and our farms in this country, and have been just as complicit. I mean, I'm a very controversial statement. We treat rural Americans the way the left treats black people in urban settings. Y'all are just the niggers of the right.
Well, you have, politicians who come around generally during election years, even numbered years is the joke,
Yep.
And that's the case where I'm from, Southern Wisconsin, and it's the case in many. And the reality of the situation is that, I try to give nonpartisan advice and input on these issues, and the reality is that the establishment of the Republican Party, as well as the Democrats, fails the economic status quo that has been leaving people behind for a very long time.
I completely agree. I've often said part of the problem is there's zero political competition in a lot of these areas. Just like in urban communities, there is zero political competition for the left. In rural communities, there's zero political competition for the right. So there's no incentive for either to actually solve the issues of the populations there, because their go-to response is, what are you going to do? Vote for the other guy? And that's not really a feasible option when there's no political, cultural, or ideological machine to combat the establishment that runs these communities. So now you're seeing the collapse of rural communities all over the country, and that devolves down to high suicide rates, alcoholism, drug addiction, so on and so forth.
You said it exactly right. And, in the book, in the Henrich Cash War with the Family's story, and to be honest, economic upheaval, depression, but we all honest about mental health that our family has dealt with in this generation. We talk about alcoholism going back through my family with people who were very kind, hardworking, good people, but had a demon on their back coming out of growing up in 2 decades of economic during the Great Depression. And we try to be honest about those things. And the reason for it, I talk to my dad about this a lot, who tells a lot of stories about his own mental health, which I'm grateful to say he's alive and well today. But we want to share this. And what he said is, you got to tell people the full truth. If you want people to be there for you on this issue, you want people to care about this, they got to see us in our best and at our worst. And also so that people know they're not alone, which is why I appreciate you raising that issue.
It feels like we are leaving our rural Americans alone in this. It's only become and I'm going to say a fad, because I don't believe after Trump is out of office that we're going to see this become a continuing concern. I think it is only being brought up by this president and this administration.
Yeah, the frustration that we've seen in rural America has reached height, that's for sure. When you look at just the political analysis situation, look at 2024. Supposedly in 2016 and 2020, the Republicans with President Trump had been back. They were supposed to rural people out there to vote for the president, and they were supposed to be maxed out. And then they were making rural America generation effect, not like it or not, versus Hillary Clinton, right? And it didn't make any difference. The reality is that rural America, every single traditional rural county in my home state of Wisconsin, the closest of the blues, as well as the rural counties in Pennsylvania and Michigan, went stronger for Trump than anyone thought was possible. And people can like that, but the reality is that they have to know that is because the economic that has people behind for decades is Donald speak to. He was into that frustration, and whether people support or not, that's a crucial factor.
Yeah, Brian, we can tell that you're probably in one of those rural counties right now. We're having some trouble with connection. I think, Juan, tell me if I'm right, you're going to try to take him off, bring him back in just a second. All right, so hopefully we'll see you again very soon. Maybe we can get the connection cleared up there. But my goodness, this is exactly the type of thing that we've been talking about. Yeah. I mean, and Trump floated the idea of leaving the illegal immigrants here, right? Mm-hmm. And hey, maybe we'll give amnesty just to the ones who are working on the farms, and that'd be like one of the worst choices he could do.
It's a betrayal,
and he backed off on it.
Yes, and that's because a lot of people raised it like immediately online. No amnesty went trending because This was one of your major promises.
Yeah.
Was one, mass deportations, close the border, get rid of people. We're not even hitting Obama numbers yet.
Right.
We're not even there yet.
Although, did you hear why? Was it you who told me the reason why? Somebody told me recently.
Yeah.
The Obama counted everyone he turned away at the border as a deportation.
Yes.
So that's why his numbers are inflated.
Yes.
Right.
So
but still, you're still right.
They're inflated by some estimates 1.5 million, but that still puts him far over where Trump is right now. We need to be hitting. I did the calculations. We need to be hitting plus like 100,000+ per month to hit Obama numbers, and we're not.
Yeah.
We need to be close to like 120,000 per month to hit Obama numbers.
What is it that Tom Homan wants to? He wants to get what, 7,000 a day or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Man, that would be good.
Yeah, I'm all for it. I say if you're here illegally, I don't care whether you're a law-abiding illegal, which is a freaking misnomer. Bare minimum.
You're illegal, so you can't be law-abiding.
Yeah, you have to commit
right?
fraud to stay here. You have to lie to stay here. Everything you do every day, you have to commit more and more felonies to stay here legally. But my biggest thing is one of the biggest lobbies in, is the Chamber of Commerce, is big business, right? In D.C., they want cheap labor. Cheap labor deflates wages. If you can, so illegal immigration drops the floor out from under wages. And if you can bring enough people in from overseas, from India or China, so on and so forth, at the middle management level and tech level, you can cap wages too. So you're bringing them under what you would pay American citizens for. At the same time, you're bringing in illegal immigrants under what you would pay American citizens for, which leaves American citizens at the top of this who just got degrees, can't go into markets. And this is I'm skipping over how horrible our education system here is at the university level and high school level, but you have American citizens who aren't able to go into the career field in these after getting their degree, and you're also having entry level Americans, teenagers, so on and so forth, who can't go into the job market because the jobs are being taken away by illegal immigrants. And yes, there is such thing as no skill labor. It doesn't take skill to flip a burger at Mickey D's.
Yeah. Now we
got him on the phone line. Brian, are you there?
Hey, can you guys hear me all right?
Yes, much better.
Much better.
Yeah.
All right. I'm sorry about that. I'm out here in a remote part of our beloved rural America, so sometimes we deal with consequences as a result.
It's okay. I feel you. We're in New Hampshire, and our service up here sucks too. So,
so Brian, we were just talking. What are your thoughts on what Trump floated the idea of sort of amnesty for those just working on the farms, and then he backed off on it, and to us, it seems like those seem to be like the first people we should be getting. I mean, the people who are taking up American jobs ought to be the first ones we get rid of. I mean, obviously, you're criminals, right? And then you got to go to the farms.
Yeah. I think that you're touching on a really crucial issue, and I want to speak to a reality that farms are dealing with, which is that people who grew up on farms and in rural communities are some of the president's biggest supporters, as we discussed. Many of the reasons that they support him have to do with immigration. They want to secure the border. They also deal with the reality that we've got about half of farm labor right now is immigrant labor. Not all of that is necessarily people who don't have legal status, but it's about half. So there's a transition to be had, I think is really the point, And I think you're right that there are a lot of Americans, including a lot of young American kids who'd love nothing more than to work their way up on a farm as a farmhand down the road, starting a farm, buying into a farm. Those are things that people want to do if there's a brighter economic future. Where does it shake out? I can't say I know, but I can tell you this. If we were to put our farmers on a path of having a bright entrepreneurial future with rising wages, we'd have more Americans filling those jobs. And there might be some immigrant labor there still, but it's probably the kind of thing that could be handled with a, appropriately legally sourced workforce through temporary H-2A work visas, farm work visas, that kind of thing. Go back to that kind of world. I think that's possible if we have a brighter economic future for our farms.
I think there's another part of this that we often we often miss, and it's oh wow, my brain just fried for a moment.
Never happened to me before. It's never happened.
I think we're also missing that in addition to taking away the opportunity for these young kids to work their way up, working on a farm and stuff, in addition to destroying towns and stuff, the corporatization of farming throughout America has also resulted in worse food. And family farmers, American farmers, produce better food, better quality food, vegetables that are actual vegetables. I mean, we've seen this trend of rubberized vegetables and fruits online that are so engineered that you're like, you're not even getting nutrition from it anymore.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, look, the family farm issue touches not only on immigration, but so many others. And whoever is doing these jobs and however that shakes out with the economics in this country, the reality of the situation is that we actually have more expensive food, less healthy food, and less secure food. And there's a lot of reasons for it, but one of the biggest reasons is our food supply chain is so concentrated, right? So as you lose more and more family farms, you lose so many of those ways for food to get from the farm gate to the dinner table via not only grocery stores, which, some of them will carry local goods if you ask them to, but also farmers markets and other direct sales. All that stuff gets harder and harder as we lose farms. And so you have really concentrated industries. If you have one big distribution center go down, it wrecks our food supply and it jacks the prices up, right? That's why after COVID, and that's why after bird flu, whether you agree with the government's response or over response to that or not, you wipe out more farms, it becomes harder. You have one big distribution center go down, it destroys the food supply, it jacks up the prices. Ironically, people are struggling to buy affordable food and healthy food at a time when farmers are struggling to sell it when we have the supply chain locked up like that.
That creates so many downstream issues in this country. Like I prefer to go down the street from my house to get eggs. I prefer to go down the street from my house to go get milk. I prefer to do that than have to go to the grocery store or, anything that comes through a big distribution center. And the same with produce. And that used to be the staple, especially when I was stationed out in California. You could go to a farmer's market and you could find the local farmer having things at the local farmers market, and you're starting to see that disappear all throughout the country. These farmers markets are just going the way of the past.
Yeah. Well, you got market farmers that they bring their food in on a truck and they don't have the ability to do what our national supply chain does, and they're getting wiped out, and it's still happening. And here's the thing. If we continue to wipe out farms at the same rate we have it for the past century, 45,000 a year, if we do that going forward, I'm 40 years old now. By the time my little girl is my age, we'll have lost the rest of our family farms. And if you think farming and American agriculture can't become too big to fail, just screw around and find out what happens. And we're going to find out in the next couple decades.
Yeah.
I've long said there's no such thing as an industry that's too big to fail.
Yeah. Brian, I wanted to real quick give you another chance to talk about Land Rich, Cash Poor, your book, because when you were talking about it earlier, we were cutting out, we weren't getting a great representation of it. Tell us what made you write that book and what, I imagine it's really what you've been talking about just now.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Thank you. It absolutely is. And look, I grew up knowing about this problem. I just didn't understand it. I remember guys driving into the driveway, talk to my dad. They'd talk about this farm going under, that farm getting sold. I knew our way of life was disappearing. What I didn't understand was why. So when I pursued my writing career off the farm, first in journalism, then in public policy, I started researching this. And what I found is that we've had technological and governmental and economic issues that have been driving farms out of existence for the past century. And so we go into the hidden areas of history driving that disappearance. We weave that with my family story from the Great Depression to today. And we try to tell an honest story. We try to tell a raw story that says, here's why this is happening. Here's the impact of it. And we talk about that from my family story for the last 4 generations of economic upheaval. We're not unique, by the way. Every farm family has survived farm accidents and weather that blesses and threatens and economic crashes. We just maybe decided to pick up our head and try to tell the story in between the work getting done.
All right. Tell everybody where they can find your book, where they can follow you and learn more about what's happening to the American farmer in this country.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find Land Rich Cash Poor on Amazon, anywhere you buy books online, as well as bookstores nationwide. It's out now, but we also have paperback available in pre-order for anybody who wants that lower price point. I just appreciate anybody who spreads the word on these issues and gets the word out to make sure our country talks about these things.
We want to thank you for coming on. You've been an excellent guest. I'm sorry we had communication issues and audio issues at the beginning of the call, but we do have a caller calling on the show. We have Robert Lamontagne. Let's patch you in. Let's see what you got to say, Robert.
Hey, what's going on?
Hey, how you doing?
Hello. Well, I can't complain for a man of my age.
You're 35, right?
First time. Yeah, first time caller. I've listened to some of your live shows, because I'm just sort of discovering this within the last few weeks that there was a live show. So now I'm following you, and I'm a huge talk radio fan. I my earliest memories of listening to AM radio was back during E.G. Marshall, the Radio Mystery Theater.
Oh my goodness.
The Hardy Boys and the Nancy Drew Mysteries, Paul Harvey and stuff like that.
You're not 35, are you?
I've always been a fan of that. Huh?
You're not 35, are you?
No, I'm double that age.
Yeah, it's all right. You sound young enough to me.
It's just one of those things that I've always enjoyed in life. Just listening to what the people have to say, because I think that it's important. I don't think that AM radio is going anywhere. I think it's going to get stronger. I just think that we need to have the right voice.
Yeah.
Paul Harvey was America's, talk radio host for a long time.
Yeah.
And for some people, Rush Limbaugh was, and
I grew up listening to Rush Limbaugh.
It just takes that certain person,
So
ain't found them yet, but we will.
So what made you call in today? What's on your mind?
Okay, so I saw on your Facebook page a little while ago, it was a picture of a detective from Keene, New Hampshire, James F. McLaughlin. And I got to tell you, he has done a lot of horrible things to people. And his investigative techniques should really be looked at. I was charged back in 1988 with 3 counts of endangering the welfare of a minor. And I didn't take the plea deal. I said, you know what? We're going to go to fucking trial. And we did. And I lost and went to prison for 10 years. And I could not understand it because I knew I wasn't guilty of anything. And, I got out and, I just did the normal thing. I went back to work. I got a place to, room, a cell phone that I didn't even know how to use. I made all of that happen for me in one day. It was because of this from no one.
It was the prosecutor was what corrupt, or what's the story there?
Well, the prosecuting attorney back then, Edward J. O'Brien, never turned over the exculpatory evidence in my trial.
Wow.
And then put this detective on the stand to testify against me, and he knew 5 years before my trial that this detective was reprimanded for falsifying documents in cases and then lying to his superiors. You know, the attorney that represented me, he told Damian Fisher, a reporter, he said that if he had had that exculpatory evidence, I would have won my trial.
Yeah. Well, Robert, I want to see if you can plan on calling in next week. I'm told that Keith Hansen, when he's back next week, is planning on talking about this topic. And I think Juan would love to have you call back next Tuesday.
I really want to make this guy a YouTube star. If you know what I mean.
We're going to be talking about him. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for calling in today, Robert. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. Well, that's interesting. I don't know much about that, but I'm looking forward to listening to the show next week. I won't be on it, but
All right.
Up next is America's psychiatrist, Dr. Carole Lieberman, and we're going to try to ask her about the Texas flood and some of the people who are saying that it was good that people were dying in Texas. Oh my goodness. We'll see you in just a few minutes.
Yep. United We Stand, A Marine's Fight. Written by Julian Aciard. I wrote this book to decipher through the tumultuous political dialogue and political gangbanging we see on both sides of the aisle between politicians, activists, influencers, and pundits, and get down to brass tacks solutions in order to save our republic. Again, United We Stand, A Marine's Fight, written by Julian Aciard. You can purchase the book on Amazon, Kindle, and Barnes & Noble.
Would you rather spend time with family and friends in the pool or at the barbecue rather than landscaping your yard? Well, Augusta Lawn Care is here to help you with all of your landscaping needs. Proudly serving southern New Hampshire, we handle everything. Weekly mowing, spring and fall cleanups, bush trimming, mulch installs, lawn treatments, aeration, dethatching, and even snow plowing and salting when the dreaded winter hits. Call Augusta Lawn Care today and let your yard be the best looking yard on the block. Call 603-331-4768. Augusta Lawn Care, locally owned, professionally done. Call 603-331-4678 or visit us online at AugustaLawnCareServices.com/Londonderry. That's AugustaLawnCareServices.com/Londonderry.
New Hampshire Republican Governor Kelly Ayotte has been making a lot of noise about how she's funding education. The Republican budget she just signed provides more money for education than ever before. She even bragged the other day that New Hampshire is top 10 in the country when it comes to funding our children's education, as if giving money to school systems has anything to do with learning. If you look at the math, And if you got schooled in New Hampshire, the odds are good it's not your best subject. It's the exact opposite. The more money we throw at schools, the less kids learn. We're committed to wasting money on an experiment that failed, unless wasting money to drive parents to homeschool their kids was the goal. We prefer to pick on Democrats, lower hanging fruit and all that, but our rhetorical woodshed doesn't discriminate. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for GraniteGrok, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
This could be the moment we've been waiting for, the chance to feel alive.
Sometimes we forget we live in one of the most beautiful states in the country. This summer, vacation right here and discover your new.
This is where it all begins. This is where it all begins.
Is this one you too, or? I mean, not you too, but you as well.
Yeah. I love making music. It's so much fun.
Yeah, why not? I mean, it's you're good at it, right?
Yeah, it's poetry. I mean, that's what music is poetry put to music.
Yeah,
is what it should be, and not the constant degradation we see currently.
Yeah, we kind of have gone a long way in music. Hey, since we're gonna hopefully soon, God willing, be talking with America's psychiatrist, Dr. Carole Lieberman. We're working on getting her on the line right now. I wanted to go back to our subject from last week. We were talking a little bit about those Texas floods, and turns out that there were people, according to Time magazine, when Give Directly began posting calls for donations to help flood victims, they received disturbing replies such as, "They deserved it," and "No, they voted for this to happen." Can you believe that?
That is just insane at this point. So she says the pediatrician who claimed the Texas flood victims
Christina
were Trump
Props.
supporters,
Yeah.
who got what they voted for, has issued a groveling apology after being canceled and fired. This is insane. This is where we've come to in society, where because you assume that the other people or the people who are being hurt happen to wear a different political jersey than you, that you wish for their demise. I understand where this comes from, right? You're angry at what you see on the opposite side of the aisle. I've never wished for, I don't wish that the illegal immigrants are harmed. I don't wish that that trans people are hurt. I don't wish that the Marxists and the commies on the left are hurt. They're Americans. I just wish you would get educated and stop being stupid.
And I wonder what they mean by that, right? Like, do they mean, oh, because you want to deport illegal immigrants, you deserve to die in a flood? Or do they mean because you don't believe in climate change, you deserve to die in a flood?
Both.
But Trump did not campaign against climate change. That was not what anybody was voting. I don't believe in climate change, but that's not what we were voting for when we were voting for Trump. It had nothing to do with believing or not believing in climate change.
But this is the problem, is when politics becomes who you are as a person. When your politics becomes your identity, it takes over everything to the point where you can rationalize. It becomes a religion.
Yeah.
To where you can rationalize saying the most abhorrent things about the people who are on the opposite side of the aisle, that was the whole pretext of that was the whole contextualization of why I wrote my book, United We Stand a Marines Fight, because I don't believe we should continue to engage in this tumultuous political dialogue where, because you happen to wear a different jersey than I do, I happen to see you as less human. I don't believe the political gangbanging is something that we should behold as normal in society. As a matter of fact, one of the songs I wrote is literally about that. Like, are we done yet playing these games where the influencers on this side who happen to be far to the extreme and the influencers on this side who happen to be far to the extreme spend all their time arguing with each other, and then we adopt their talking points as a part of how we engage in dialogue with each other?
Yeah, and you said wearing jerseys. I think that's exactly what it is.
It's
I
political
know
gangbanging.
so many people who politics become like a sport.
Mhm.
And you always root for your team. You always take your team's side. They
And don't hold your own team accountable.
One of the great things about I know we're way off subject at this point, but one of the great things about this Jeffrey Epstein thing, where everybody's kind of getting upset at Trump, one of the refreshing things about that is that it shows that we aren't sycophants that will just believe whatever we're told, even if it comes from our side. We are willing to think critically.
Well, you do see some of those sycophants out there. Like, there are a lot of influencers, and Charlie Kirk's a good example of this. You have a lot of people who the Jeffrey Epstein files were something that we were promised, which is exactly why Trump is being taken to task for this. If he hadn't promised to release the files, if he hadn't made that campaign promise, this would have been talked about in the conspiracy land of the social media. It wouldn't have been something in the national public dialogue.
Yeah.
But because he promised it,
don't go after Charlie Kirk now. Don't you do that.
No. My contention with Charlie Kirk is you can't continue during the election cycle to mention this, make a big issue out of it, and then say, "Oh, I trust the government."
Yeah.
I don't care whether it's your friends in the government either. I
Right.
question government, period, because I'm a limited government conservative, which means all government, all agents of the state deserve to be questioned at all times,
Yeah.
whether you're a cop, a firefighter, a teacher, or whether you're the FBI, the CIA, or whether you happen to be a government agent working for them all.
So my point is about thinking critically.
Agreed.
Which I think this case proves that the left obviously doesn't think critically.
No,
anything
critical
bad
thinking
that
is
happens
gone.
to the other side, they're happy for. It doesn't matter.
Mhm.
You know. So
that's why they're so quick to dehumanize you. Like, all of a sudden you're Mecha Hitler if you disagree with them on anything.
Yeah, but bringing that forward, because since I think maybe we may not be able to get Carole Lieberman, we'll try to get her on next week. Oh, maybe we will. Okay, but while we're waiting, one of my thoughts on that is that I think if we are thinking critically about even the Jeffrey Epstein thing, I don't think we have to. I think we have to look at the people that are involved. We don't have to trust the government, but there are some multiple trustworthy people with their hands in it that we should be able to say, well, how can they all be lying to us? Maybe it was deleted before they got there. Maybe it was thrown away, burnt, destroyed, that kind of stuff.
But if that was the case, then don't do the pomp and circumstance
Right.
of having people at the
Right.
White House with binders filled with redacted nothing to come out and make it seem like there's something that's going to be dropped. It's like, tune in next week for the big drop.
Yeah, and I would love to talk a lot about. We could talk for another 2 hours on that, but
we got our guest.
We do have Dr. Carole Lieberman.
Hello.
Thank you for coming on, ma'am.
Yes, I can hear her, so she is on. Good. Good to have you with us today. We were actually kind of springboarded from talking about the Texas floods and the liberal reaction saying that it was good that these people were dying, and we started getting on the subject of people not thinking critically when it comes to their side of the aisle. When something bad happens to your opposition, it's always good, even if young children are dying. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes. People have gone crazy. That's my thought. There's so much anger, so much rage, and so much need to blame other people for it. Yes, in the Texas floods, perhaps you were already talking about this. There are people who have come out and instead of expressing sorrow and prayers for the people who died and the people who, the campers and all that, instead they're taking this opportunity to blame Trump. Everything is blame Trump. It's cloudy outside. Blame Trump. And so this one doctor, a pediatrician no less, Dr. Probst, wrote something online. She wrote, "May all visitors, children, non-MAGA voters, and pets be safe and dry." And she said Kerr County MAGA voted to gut FEMA, so she was blaming it on MAGA and on Trump. And she's a pediatrician, and so the clinic that she worked at fired her. I mean, it went viral, and the clinic fired her. And of course, now she's groveling and she's trying to say, "Well, when I wrote that, I didn't know that there were people who died." Really, lady, where were you? Up in an attic somewhere?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just crazy.
I wanna touch on that because this is something, and we just got a question about this from Soccer Dad. While on the Texas floods conversation, what are your thoughts on Mexican firefighters who came to the rescue while the American government didn't do enough? Let me be very specific. The federal government defunding FEMA, what they did was push the FEMA funding back to the states because each state has its own individual FEMA organization, entrusting the states with federal funding to exercise the rescue operations within their state. And the federal government did direct National Guard, active duty troops, and other rescue organizations, along with private rescue organizations, to get down on the ground. And we had a guest on last week. But what is more disturbing to me is this gut check reaction that because somebody might have voted for a different political candidate than your prescribed or preferred flavor of ice cream, that we immediately have to jump to wishing the worst upon people and wishing the demise of our political opponents. It's no better than political gangbanging at this point.
Yes. It's and of course it's even gotten, it keeps getting worse. Telling people that they should be ready to take a bullet. Have you seen all of that?
Yeah.
If that you have to get out there and fight ICE and be willing to take a bullet to save America. I mean, somebody who would be that stupid that they would believe that they're going out there to try to protect ICE is worth taking a bullet for, and that's saving America as opposed to the inverse, where really, they're trying to, I know that some people, I was born and bred in New York, but I live in California. And it's very pretty here, but the governor has gone crazy. I mean, he's a puppet, and he's doing all kinds of crazy things, not just in regard to like natural disasters, but also, with the Palisades fire.
Yeah.
Are you aware about what he's saying? And before he came out and actually said it, that they want to, in the Palisades land where the fire scorched the earth, and there are some people who are trying to build their houses back, and of course they're being very stingy about giving passes, permission. They did that in Malibu too. That all the people who, there have been a number of fires in Malibu, and when they hold on to the permits so that people can't rebuild their house. And so they're doing this in Pacific Palisades, and it has finally come out what people suspected, that was going to happen. They're trying to not let people rebuild their own house or other people build houses, regular houses. They want it to go for low income housing.
Oh my
like
goodness.
To be, yes, in Pacific Palisades and Malibu, they want to turn, and it's a fair amount of land, that got scorched. They want to turn that into, for the homeless and for people who can't afford very much, Chapter 8 or whatever.
So it's a land grab.
Yes. It's like what they did in Maui.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking with people who knew about the Maui fire and who were saying that that's what they're going to do here, and I was thinking, nah, they couldn't, they wouldn't. I was worried about it, but I was hoping that they wouldn't. And now it's come out, and between that and Mayor Bass saying this week also that she was going to give money to the people who were affected by the ICE raids.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, it's not like she's going to give her money. She's not going to her piggy bank and getting money for people who, were affected in some way by the ICE raids. She's taking our money. It's the taxpayers' money.
My goodness.
So giving taxpayer money to illegal aliens.
Yeah.
Now, I look at this and, we've seen this across the country. We saw this after the riots in L.A., during the Obama administration, and all over the country. We've seen it after multiple catastrophic extreme weather events throughout the country. The buying up of properties and American land and stuff by foreign brokerages and stuff like BlackRock and so on and so forth. But again, the most disturbing thing is it says America's psychiatrist. What would lead somebody mentally to think it's okay to wish harm on somebody just because they hold different political beliefs on, anything? It baffles me that we immediately jump to dehumanizing each other.
Well, it's been building. This didn't happen overnight. There's been a lot of dissension over the years. There should have been more dissension when Obama was president. I mean, he's the worst president that we've ever had. And so, I mean, even with Biden,
Auto pen.
when Biden, what?
And never mind. Auto pen. That's what I call him.
Yes, right. Well, when he was running for president from his basement, I was doing a lot of media interviews talking about trying to warn people, because one of the things that I do is I'm an expert witness and forensic psychiatrist, a trial expert witness. And so I have a lot of experience with evaluating people for their competency. Like if people are arguing over a parent's will or something, the kids are arguing about it, or a grandparent. And so and they say, well, Daddy wasn't competent when he gave all the money to you. Otherwise, he would have given it to me, right? So I saw right away, I called it encroaching dementia. And I tried, warning people. I mean, the thing was, at that time, people didn't want, whoever supposedly voted for Biden, however many people that there really were, anybody who did, let's put it that way, anybody who voted for Biden, they weren't really voting for Biden. They were voting against Trump.
Yeah.
So, of course, now I hope they're sorry. But anyway, certainly since those years, the things have built up. I mean, with the Democratic Party saying that Trump was Hitler, and I mean, it's just been growing over the years. And people are dissatisfied for a lot of different reasons. Even though they see that there are a lot of things that are getting better. I mean, part of the problem also is that Trump is doing these things so quickly. Now, I was at his inauguration, and he was signing, bills by the dozen, and it was very exciting and all that. But and of course, he didn't just figure these things out right when he got elected. He had these plans for a long time, figuring out what would make America great again. And so then when he did get inaugurated, and he was able to putting these things into effect, with executive orders and everything else, he was, in a hurry to do that. Like he couldn't wait to do that, to fix things. And some people it's not so much that they disagree with what he's doing or what his plan, but they're a little overwhelmed by how quickly things are changing.
Yeah,
and
change scares people.
Exactly. So there's a tendency to want to push back. Wait a second, what are you doing? You're changing the education system? You're like the Supreme Court. I couldn't believe it. They gave him permission. That's great. But so it's like things are coming every week. There's something new besides ICE and besides illegal aliens and all that. There are a lot of other things. And so some people are getting a little scared because they don't know where this is all leading. I personally have a lot of faith in Trump, and can't wait to see these things go one thing after the other. I mean, it's not Trump's fault that Biden and Obama let all these illegal immigrants in. And so, yes, when there are so many of them, it's like you have to kind of get them out quickly because they're taking such a toll on our country, not only in terms of taking money, but the violence, the rape, the murders, the house squatting, all of these things. And the numbers are so huge that we really have, in order to make some kind of effective change, we have to do it quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to thank you for.
Well, we have.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
Juan has a question.
Yes. Does Trump seem a little out of step over the past 2 weeks? Like he's starting to get out of step with his campaign promises. And
Shame on you, Juan. Shame on you for asking that question.
Some of his campaign promises and some of the things he's ran on. He's teased amnesty for illegal immigrants. He's backed away from the Jeffrey Epstein files. He's backed away from a couple different things where he seems to be bending on things. Does it seem like he's a little out of step to where he was during the campaign cycle and in his previous administration?
Well, perhaps he's even going a little too quickly for him. I don't know how he could possibly have his fingers, his little fingers. Just making a joke about that.
Oh, I got it. It took me a second.
That's what people say. I'm just kind of, but it's so hard to keep on top of all of these things. That maybe, part of the problem is that there was so much at once between the war in Ukraine, between Russia and Ukraine, and then Putin turned out to not be as reasonable as Trump thought he was going to be. That was kind of a disappointment. And so he's got that to deal with. He did take care of Israel for the time being, with sending the bomber into Iran. That was great. But, all these different tariffs, I can't even pay attention to the, I don't really, it's too much to pay attention to with the tariffs. But, one thing is good, one thing is bad. That's not my wheelhouse, whatever it is. It's not mine. And so the tariff is a big thing. And then the Epstein, I know, I heard what you were saying at the beginning about, and I thought that was a misstep too. I don't necessarily blame Trump for it, but, where Pam Bondi made this big thing, even if, about the list, giving the influencers the list, that only a select few were going to have the list. And that was wrong no matter whether there is a list, you know what I mean? Whether Trump is really going to give out a list at some point or not. It's just the idea of giving something, that seemed like it was valuable to know. We're the in crowd, we're the ones who know, to these influencers. That I thought was a mistake because everybody else, felt jealous. Well, why don't I want to know that? Why don't I see that?
Yeah.
And that was something I actually criticized Biden over, was his colluding with influencers to spit out propaganda for the administration. I don't think that's a good thing for us to be emulating. I think whether you're going to provide a list or not, put it out there for everyone to see, post it on X, let everybody read it, unredacted, throw it all out there, radical transparency, accountability, efficiency, and efficacy. I think that should be the main goal of the Trump administration here forward. And I think the reason why Trump has to move at such a breakneck pace is because we have been speeding towards a cliff for decades. Our deficit is through the roof. Our debt is through the roof. Our spending is ridiculous. We have multiple federal programs and institutions. Trust in our institutions has collapsed. Trust in Congress has collapsed. We're having so many absolute catastrophic issues that have gone undealt with. But because the reality is the people in D.C. want to get reelected more than they want to fix the problem. And it's not popular to take away the free ice cream once free ice cream is on the table. And it's not popular to tell people that, hey, we have critical national infrastructure issues. We have critical national security issues. We have critical issues with our institutions. Trust in everything in this country has utterly eroded. Trust in the media has eroded. We're getting towards a point where we're not able to have rational conversations about real solutions and how to better American citizens because we don't trust anything anymore.
Yeah, and Julian, I want to kind of spring off of that because I'm looking at this on online right now, and Dr. Lieberman, you actually have a book, Lions, Tigers, and Terrorists. Oh my, right? And I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, it's actually about having a conversation from the perspective of a psychiatrist, having a conversation with children about some of the really difficult things we face in the world today. Can you talk about that? Because as the world gets darker and darker, I think we almost all need to know how to have conversations with ourselves about these things,
yes.
Especially with our kids. I have 4 kids at home.
I have 3 of my own.
Yeah, tell us about your book.
Sure, you don't have to ask me twice. It's Lions and Tigers and Terrorists, oh my, how to protect your child in a time of terror. And it is all about, the first half of the book is for grown-ups like parents and teachers, how to talk to your kids about terrorism, how to recognize when they are having emotional reactions to the threat of terrorism, how to get them to express their feelings, all kinds of things like that, how to answer the most frequently asked questions. And then the second half of the book is for kids. It's a picture book. So it starts off with what is a terrorist? And then it asks the child to draw a picture of a terrorist. And then the next page is a picture of Osama bin Laden. And so it goes into all the highlights of terror, from 9/11 to, so like I talk about a terrorist is like a bully on the playground. So there's a picture of that. I go into, why do terrorists want to kill us? I talk about that when they blow up their suicide vests, and it's like having a big temper tantrum. They're angry if we don't go along with what they believe.
Wow.
I talk about the underwear bomber, the shoe bomber, the Paris cartoon incident, and it's all the highlights, everything you would want to know about terrorism. And in each of the halves, for the parents, I have like a whole list of things that they can do to help their kid to grow up with more resilience. Different activities and different books, and like reading books about heroes, and going to certain museums, and then for the children, I have 10 things that they can do on their own to build their own resilience. I mean, that whole thing, we're talking about, Trump and politics and all that in America, but there's a whole other world out there. I mean, there's a whole other danger out there, which is all these terrorists who are trying to take over America. I mean, that is so, we are so talking about being on the precipice. Well, there are terrorists. There are cells in our country already. Biden brought over 80,000 Afghans when he had made that horrible surrender to them. And,
it's a scary world. Yeah,
it's a very scary world.
I do want to touch on something because I want to be very clear for the audience. Terrorism, in its broadest sense, is the use of violence against non-combatants to achieve political or ideological aims. It is not exclusive to the Middle East. There are terrorist cells, and you can see how some, people like Antifa operate like terrorists. You can see that there are organizations here domestically within the United States who operate like terrorists. They are not exclusive to Middle Eastern terrorists. And I'm saying this as somebody who fought in Iraq, and who had brothers who fought in Afghanistan. So this is something that you can apply that definition to the people. A terrorist is a person who uses unlawful violence and intimidation against civilians to pursue political and ideological aims.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we're getting the way out of time signal. But I wanted to, real quick, Thank you, Dr. Carole Lieberman, for coming on the show. Tell us where we can find the book or where we can find more information about the work that you do.
Sure. I have a number of websites, but the best one to go to for that is terroristtherapist.com. I call myself, I even registered it, trademark, the terrorist therapist. And so terroristtherapist.com, there's not only the book, which of course is also on Amazon, but there are videos, music videos that I created for the anniversaries of 9/11 and one for last year for 10/7. And I send them around on mobile billboards around New York and Washington, D.C. and Los Angeles on the anniversaries. And so you can see those on the website, terroristtherapist.com.
That's great. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today, Carole.
Thank you for joining
You're
us.
very welcome.
Wow, fantastic episode.
Yeah. What a show. What a show.
All right. Thank you. This is your episode of Granite State Live. Please tune in next week. Up next is Shadow Band. Make sure to go get all of our content from Blue Collar Intellectual, Granite State Live, and Shadow Band at Ram TV Live. Catch all the old episodes. Share it with your friends. Share it with your family.
And Keith Hansen back
And
next week.
Keith Hansen back next week. Thank you, Josh Barnes, for being in the studio.